I would like to begin by stating a simple historical fact. The Easter Rising did happen, although there are still some around who appear to wish that this seminal event in modern Irish history had never occurred. Certainly last November, the government of Ireland seemed to be of that persuasion when it launched Ireland Inspires on an infamous evening at the GPO as part of its commemorative programme. This video presentation literally airbrushed the men and women of 1916 out of history in the very location where they made history. No images of Pearse, Plunkett, Connolly and Clark, MacDonagh, McDermott and Kent were on display. The founding fathers of our nation ignored, as if they had never lived, as if they had never died. In their place, the film featured images of Queen Elizabeth of England, David Cameron, the Reverend Ian Paisley, Bob Geldof, Bono and Brian O'Driscoll. At this stage, one has to ask a fundamental question. Who fears to speak of 1916? Who benefits from portraying that great event, the pivotal event in our history, as just another event in a decade of historic events? Official Ireland is now suggesting that we must be mature and remember all who died in a shared history, that there should be multiple wreath-laying for all combatants, and that we should welcome British royal visitors at commemoration ceremonies, including ones planned to exclusively honour the British soldiers who died in Dublin during 1916. Also, we should welcome the erection of a memorial wall in Glasnevin Cemetery inscribed with the names of all the 1916 dead. Incredible. Connolly, Pearse and other soldiers of the Republic on the very same memorial list as the British soldiers that fought to destroy the Irish Republic. Recently, I was working in my studio on a project sponsored by the trade union SIP2. I had been asked to design an extension to the already completed tapestry based on the 1913 lockout to feature the story of the Easter Rising. As it happened, one of the first panels I began working on was the execution of James Connolly. I decided to base my design on a poster I had recently discovered that had been published in 1916 in New York, which featured Connolly's execution. Now, the artist, who was probably American, depicted the firing squad as composed of redcoats, which is understandable enough considering American colonial history. However, I knew that this had to be incorrect. And on checking out the facts, I learned that the firing squads in Kilmainham Jail after Easter week were drawn from the regiment of the Sherwood Foresters. This was a reward given to the regiment because they had suffered serious casualties at the Battle of Mount Street during the Rising. Anyway, there I was, carefully drawing a firing squad made up of Sherwood Foresters when I was distracted by something on the radio. It was probably a mention of the name of the regiment that caught my attention. Someone on the radio was suggesting that we should erect a plaque at Mount Street in Dublin in memory of the fallen Sherwood Foresters. Unbelievable. A memorial plaque to the regiment that shot not only the badly wounded James Connolly strapped in a chair, but also 13 other patriots in the aftermath of the Rising. Self-confident nations would never engage in such nonsense, such national self-abasement. Imagine the British authorities erecting a plaque at the Cenotaph in London to honour those gallant members of the Luftwaffe who perished on bombing raids of London during the Second World War. I think not. In honouring everybody in general, we commemorate nobody in particular. The presentation of the Rising as just another event is a distortion of our history, a deliberate and desperate attempt to distance citizens from the aims and ideals of a golden generation, the likes of which we have not seen since. Among their number were poets, writers, playwrights, teachers, musicians, journalists, actors, artists, and ordinary men and women, citizens, striving to create a society rich in cultural activity and identity. They contributed to the cultural revival of a defeated nation, and they left a legacy that needs to be embraced and cherished with pride. Pride in our language, not a dismissal of it. Pride in our flag, not a disregard for it. Pride in our national anthem, not an apology for it. With trust in those elected to represent our interests, citizens' interests. The men and women of 1916 were prepared to sacrifice their lives for their country, in stark contrast to those in our time willing to sacrifice their country for their lifestyles. I believe that it is only right and proper that at this historic time, this centenary, that the bravery and sacrifice of the men and women who fought in 1916 be marked with dignity and respect. But I believe it would be a disservice to their memory if we failed to recognise why they did what they did in the first place. Let's face it, these people were not merely rebels, they were visionaries. What they desired was not simply a government in Dublin, a green flag on Dublin Castle, and a harp on the coinage. They were calling for revolution, a complete transformation of both public and personal reality. The blueprint for that vision was set out in the proclamation of the Irish Republic, a visionary statement of intent which rightly belongs in the pantheon of human achievement, alongside other exceptional documents like the Magna Carta and the American Declaration of Independence. Let's face it, the Proclamation of 1916 is much more than simply a call to arms. It is a progressive statement of intent and a vision for a better future for all Irish men and women. The political programme of the Rising, incorporated in the proclamation, was built on the key principles of sovereignty, democracy and independence. Sovereignty meant that the people of Ireland would have control over the decision-making processes that govern their lives. Democracy meant that all the people would share in making these decisions, not a class minority, not a single sex, and not a religious majority. Independence meant that sovereignty and democracy would be exercised by the people, not in isolation from or indifferent to the wider world of which they were part, but free from any form of outside domination or coercion. The proclamation declared a proper republic in which the common good would be the guiding principle of government. This republic guaranteed civil and religious liberties and equal rights and opportunities to all citizens, men and women alike, regardless of religious, cultural, ethnic, or other differences. The proclamation of the Republic was and remains a remarkably progressive document. Sadly, however, the vision of 1916 has never been fully realised, and the Irish people, north and south, have been forced to bear the consequences of political, social, economic, and cultural failure. Reclaim the Vision of 1916, a citizens' initiative, has been established to ensure that not only the centenary of the Easter Rising be celebrated in an appropriate and relevant manner, but also, and more importantly, to ask the fundamental question, where stands the Republic today, for which so many gave their very lives? With this in mind, the initiative will be organising a wide range of activities to shamelessly celebrate this seminal event in our history. On Sunday, April the 24th, 2016, the actual date of the commencement of the Rising, the Reclaim 16 initiative will be organising a major national gathering in Dublin in the form of a parade and pageant. The theme of the parade will be the proclamation of the Irish Republic, and will progress through the streets of Dublin in a rousing, unfettered celebration of the vision of 1916, conducted in a lively, colourful, dramatic and musical manner, involving bands, dancers, community groups and street theatre. After the parade, the pageant will take place on a strategically sited stage, which will convert O'Connell Street into a massive public amphitheatre. This will be an exuberant, vital, exciting affair featuring music, poetry, song, dance and drama performed by some of Ireland's leading talents. Already, Fionnuala Flanagan, Stephen Ray, Sinead O'Connor, Damien Dempsey, Adrian Dunbar and Francis Black are on board for this unique event. In order to maintain independence, the Reclaim 1916 initiative will not be seeking official funding for its ambitious programme, but instead will rely on support from those citizens who believe that the vision of 1916 is still relevant in the Ireland of today. One fundraiser for the campaign is a magnificent limited edition print of James Connolly, generously donated by the celebrated artist Jim Fitzpatrick. You can get a leaflet for that after this meeting. We urge all those citizens who not only wish to commemorate the vision of the men and women of 1916, but who also want to challenge those who have betrayed that vision to come to Dublin and be part of what will be an historic gathering on the 24th of April next year. The Reclaim the Vision of 1916 initiative will give all citizens the opportunity to gather in celebration of that golden moment in our history, and in so doing create a platform for the republic that successive administrations have failed to deliver, a republic of equality and opportunity, with nobody marginalised, left behind or forgotten, and no one forced through economic circumstance to flee the country of their birth. This is our country. Its title deeds are ours. It neither belongs to a banking elite, a developer elite, or a political elite. We, the citizens, need to reclaim it. The centenary year ahead presents this opportunity. This may be our time, our golden moment. It should not be missed. The centenary celebrations give us the opportunity to reflect and consider and act upon the aims and ideals, beliefs and actions of those who in their time decided to act in the cause of freedom. Their vision of freedom remains the yardstick by which we measure the march of the nation. Let all of us together, through this initiative, work towards the realisation of their dream, their vision, and build a republic that serves the needs of all citizens. A society of equality with no citizen left behind, nobody abandoned, homeless, uneducated, uncared for, or forced by economic circumstances to flee the country of their birth. If all citizens have a stake in society, then all citizens will sacrifice to rebuild it. That willingness to reach out to others and support others has not disappeared as a result of the greed of a few. That remains the legacy of 1916. It is in all of us. It is in our collective DNA. We must return politics to the secure embrace of the people, the citizens, the incorruptible inheritors of Irish freedom. That was the dream of the men and women of 1916. Let us dare to dream again. Sinna Will, Gur maith agad.